one. So I have to get used to that. Recording in progress. Yes, we didn't have one in April simply because Easter kind of, the Easter holidays kind of conflicted with the time we normally do it. And this is a little bit later in the month, but we're picking up on one of our April themes, which was about underwater swimming. So we have on the call tonight, Anna Hattersley. I don't know whether she can wave, but she pitched about writing about free diving and interviewed our guest today, Emma, for the piece. So we had some really beautiful content in the April issue and it was all about underwater. And judging by the amount of people who have signed up, it's obviously a real interest for all of you, which is great. If you've been to one of these sessions before, usually I do all the questions at the beginning. And then I kind of, we look at Q&As that were sent in and also in the chat. But I'm in the middle of sending the June issue to print. So today is press day and we haven't quite finished yet. So I'm actually handing over to Simon this evening, who's going to do the Q&A with Emma for me. And then I'll sort of come back and help with the Q&A at the end. Just a reminder that we do record it. If you don't want your face, just turn your camera off and just please try and keep yourselves muted, just because we end up picking up all kinds of things that are going on in everyone else's homes. So let me hand over to Simon.
Thank you, Ella. I'm going to be a little bit distracted because people are still coming in, so I'm going to be, I have to keep my eye on the waiting room and letting people in. And so firstly, welcome, Emma. Can you give everyone a wave so they probably see you already, but so yeah, as Ella explained, Emma featured in the article written by Anna in our April issue. Emma is a free diver and a free diving instructor. So I'm going to start, as Alice, I'm going to start with some questions, and then we're going to hand it over to all of you to ask your questions as well. But I'm going to ask the first few questions if that's okay. And I'm starting with something really simple, Emma, because I don't know anything about freediving at all, so there might be dumb questions, but can you just explain to us in 30 seconds what exactly is freediving?
Okay, this is a great question because people get very confused about what freediving is. Freediving is essentially breath hold diving. So you don't have to dive super deep. You don't have to hold your breath for 10 minutes. If you are in water and holding your breath, then you're freediving. So if you think of it as snorkeling, you've got a snorkel in, but you're breathing, so you're pootling around breathing. When you take that snorkel out and hold your breath, then you're free diving. So it's breath hold diving.
Okay, so simple as that. There's diving for coins in the bottom of the pool, as we used to do as kids. That's free diving.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, sorry, someone else to let in. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you got started in free diving.
Well, some of you may have seen the film The Big Blue by Luc Besson, which I watched and I just was captivated by it. And this was many, many years ago. And I also had read in National Geographic magazine about a freediver called Deborah Andolo. And the images in the magazine were just really incredible. And I was just captivated by this image of somebody without any support, just on their own in this deep blue water. It was really beautiful. But I just presumed that this was something that you only did if you lived in Cuba or Turks and Caicos or the Mediterranean. And it was not something accessible to me because I'm not particularly sporty, or in the UK. 23 years ago, which I can't believe it's so long now, 23 years ago, I went on holiday. It was New Year's Eve and I went to the Canary Islands with a friend of mine. And on New Year's Eve, we had a meal and she said, if you could have another life, what would you do and what would you be? And I said, I would be a free diver. And she said, what's that? And so I attempted to explain what freediving was, really knowing nothing about it at all. And then we left the restaurant and we went to a bar and we met a British guy and we said, oh, are you on holiday? He said, no, I live here. I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm a freediver. And I was just like, oh, the universe has spoken. So I dragged this poor guy out, and it was raining at the time, into the rain. And I said, you've got to tell me everything about freediving. And he said that there was somewhere you could go in the UK, which was, it's called the submarine, for those of you who know, it's in Gosport, a big tank called the Submarine Escape Training Tank, also known as the SET tank. And it was 30 meters deep, 36 degrees warm, so very, very warm and toasty. And on the weekends, freedivers would go and just go up and down. So during the week, submariners would learn how to go in the bottom and come up. We would go in at the weekend and go up and down. So I started going there to learn to freedive, but there weren't any kind of proper courses. I didn't know what I was doing. The people teaching me didn't really know what they were doing. So it was this kind of very strange evolution, but I was completely obsessed, absolutely obsessed. I dreamt about freediving. Everything was about freediving for me. And so it was a very it's a very long story, but to cut it super short, I became obsessed. I loved it. It was just opened up so much within me and my life. And I trained to be a freediving instructor, and then it essentially became my job. And I've been teaching almost pretty much full time for the last 20 years.
Okay, I'm gonna get back to that bit about, you said opening up so much in your life in a minute, but I've got another couple of questions first. What is the most memorable thing you've done that's sort of connected with freediving?
Oh my goodness me. So many things. Okay, there's a few. Am I allowed to have more than one?
Of course.
Thank you. I think the first was when I just started, it was in a pool in Chester, when I was living in Manchester at the time. And I held my breath for 3 minutes for the first ever time. And I just couldn't believe it that me, was not very sporty, had held their breath for that long. And shortly after doing that, I then swam breaststroke 50 meters. Again, something that I had never, ever, ever thought possible for somebody like me. That was incredibly memorable. Freediving with wild dolphins in the Bahamas was just mind-blowing, because you don't ever want to go towards them. You have to kind of go away and pretend you don't care, and then they come and check you out. So you don't touch them, but so I remember diving down. It was only shallow, probably 10 meters, because it was in Bimini, this kind of big flat plains of sand with only 10 meters of water. And I heard this, my very bad dolphin impression. And I turned around, and this dolphin was literally here, touching my mask. And I remember the eye being like a kind of an olive. And of course, my hands were right by my sides, because you never touch them, but it was touching me. And it was just mind-blowingly bizarre. I had another amazing experience in Scotland, diving on a wreck. And that was just completely different, but very, very, very beautiful. And then I think the other kind of wonderful experiences I've had is teaching people who were like me, as in they think that they can't do it, or they have their limitations here, and you just show them just what they're capable of doing, and suddenly, their mind is blown, and they think, oh my goodness, but if I could do that, what else could I do in my life? So yes, that's a kind of nice selection.
Okay. Everything you say is prompting more and more questions, but I'm going to try and stick to the script I've written. Otherwise, I'll take up all the time and won't give anyone else a chance. So I've got a couple more from me, then I'm going to ask some that other people have sent in. In the interview, in the article that Anna wrote, you said that it's more of an active meditation than an extreme sport. That's the quote you said. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of people say, okay, freediving, it's an extreme sport. And it can, but it really isn't. So I like to think of an extreme sport as something very adrenaline based, although it doesn't have to be. But with freediving, we have lots of people who come who are very, very sporty. They come to learn, they're super sporty, and they think it's just going to be like any other sport. And they approach freediving like any other sport, like kind of more, push, push, push. You can't do that with freediving. You have to be incredibly relaxed. You can't freedive unless not only you're relaxed, but your mind is in the right place. So I always like to say that freediving is 99% mental and the rest is in your head. Because no matter how people pretend that they're not concerned or worried, it is so kind of primal when you get into the water and you hold your breath, and it brings up so much stuff. So it is like an active meditation, because you have to keep control of your body and your mind and get everything into a state of not only relaxation, but complete kind of awareness and control of everything that your body is doing all of the time.
Okay. I'm gonna keep moving on, although that obviously prompts lots more questions, but I wanted to ask a little bit about the breathing itself. And you just said you've come from a breathing class, and obviously breathing, I mean, you don't breathe when you're freediving because you're holding your breath, but obviously, and this whole idea that you need to breathe properly, and you said it again in the article that, and this links back to what you were saying a bit earlier on when you were explaining about some of the really memorable things about it. But you said you want more people to breathe properly. It is a gateway to themselves and a gateway to changing their lives. So what do you mean about how do people breathe wrongly, and what is breathing properly, and yeah, how does that open your life up, as you said earlier?
Well, before we teach anyone how to hold their breath, we teach them how to breathe. That's the most important thing. And you know, I've dealt with people for decades now, and before I taught freediving, I was doing yoga, I was doing Buddhist meditation, I was singing, I was playing the flute. So the kind of breathing has always been a massive part of my life. And at least 12% of the population have active breathing dysfunction. So their breathing is a mess, but most of them have no idea. And I've worked with Olympic athletes and Paralympic athletes. And the first Olympic athlete I worked with was a cyclist. I then went on to work with swimmers, and she had really, really skewed breathing. She had asthma, she had anxiety issues. There's even an athlete that I'm hopefully going to be working with soon, that I'm trying to be very clear, make sure I don't, no names or anything, but their breathing becomes so disordered, they actually end up having extreme panic attacks, which they end up in hospital. So people's breathing can, if you don't have control over your breathing, it can just spiral, and your health and your mental health and everything can just go to pot. So most people don't know how to breathe properly, and that sounds really, really daft, but a lot of people, they breathe shallowly. So many people cannot breathe through their nose. I mean, I'm always looking at people breathing going, I need to work with you. And you can't just randomly approach a stranger and tell them that they're not breathing properly.
Making sure I'm breathing from my nose now.
Yes, but it's little things. And so I adapted the program that I did for the athletes, for the Olympic and the Paralympic athletes. I adapted that into that's why I've just finished teaching my class for the evening, to my breathing optimization classes, and they are for absolutely anyone. So yes, I have Olympic athletes and Paralympic athletes who do the classes, and I also have people who have no intention of freediving ever in their lives, but they have breathing problems, or they just want to improve whatever sport they're doing.
Okay. So I've got a couple of further questions on the breathing then, and I think that last point about the supporting the other sports they're doing leads straight into this, actually. So could practicing freediving, or could practicing breathing as a preparation for freediving, could that help you swim further or to swim faster if you're interested in improving your swimming?
Oh yes, 100%, 100%. So most of the athletes I've worked with have actually been swimmers. So some of them have been, I suppose I don't know if you know Kerry Ann Payne, who does did really long distances and won gold. So I've worked with her, and so she does long distances, and also I've worked with athletes that do shorter distances. But yes, any time that you start to improve your breathing and learn to use what you were born with in a much more effective way, absolutely, it improves, but it doesn't just improve your sport, it improves your sleep, it improves your concentration, it improves your stress. It just, I mean, I've had people who have done freediving courses and they've got really into it, really into the breathing, really into the freediving, and they have quite literally changed their lives. They've left their jobs, they've left the country, they've changed this, they've changed that. So yes, it's really transformative, but it's about unlocking something in you. It's not me doing something to you, it's you discovering what you've got inside you.
I'm half tempted to ask you to give us a lesson right now, but that's not the point of the evening, and I think we could get very easily distracted. It all sounds super fascinating. And one thing that has come up, obviously we had the pandemic and COVID caused a lot of people breathing issues. And so I was wondering whether the breathing stuff they do for freediving, could that help people who are, some people have sort of longer term symptoms from COVID, whether it could help with any of those?
Yes, absolutely. But the only thing I would caution is that if you are dealing with physical health problems, you have to work with a freediving instructor who knows a lot about breathing. So just doing a standard freediving course with any freediving instructor should improve your breathing, absolutely. But I would encourage you, if you really want to go further, to work with a freediving instructor who has done, like me, who has done so much more work with the breath.
Okay. I'm going to move on to some of the questions that we asked people to send in a few questions in advance. So they might seem a bit random, but that's because different people have sent them in. So we've got one from Marianne, and she's asked, how can you describe the feeling of freedom when you freedive?
Oh, it's so crazy beautiful, because I'm 6 foot, and I've always grown up being kind of very clumsy. I'm always banging into things. I'm a bit ungainly, but when you're in water and you're freediving, it's like you're flying, you're floating in space. It's like suddenly you're a ballerina. It's just so freeing and beautiful. And I've had some of the most meditative experiences just at 2, 3, 4 meters deep, because you're in water, you're turning on your back, you're looking up as the light kind of flickers on the surface, and you can just move and you can spiral and you can spin, and it's like flying. It's incredible.
Okay. I'm going to keep going through the questions that I've got that have been sent in, but I just wanted to say, if anybody else who's listening in now, if you've got questions, post them in the chat, and we will try and get to those. So anything you think of as we're going along, just pop it in the chat, and we'll try and get those to Emma before we finish for the evening. And I've got one from Carol, which I'm quite interested in as well. What are the myths about freediving that you wish to dispel?
So many. Okay, myth number 1, you have to be super fit or young. No. Annabelle Briseno was in her 50s when she started freediving, and she was a granny, and she went on to get 3 world records. Natalia Molchanova was, when she was in her 50s, had every single female world record there was. Bill Graham, when he was in his 70s, he held his breath, I think it was for, I've got it written down, I've completely forgotten, it was about like 8 minutes. So myth number 1, you have to be super fit and super young. No, you don't. That's just silly. Myth number 2, you have to dive super deep or hold your breath for super long to be a freediver. Not true. Myth number 3, you have to have really big lungs. Absolutely not. I'm 6 foot, but I've got really quite small lungs. Myth number 4, when you freedive, you increase your lung capacity. No, impossible. But what you can do is increase your vital capacity, and you can improve how you use what you've got. So your lungs are not going to get bigger, but you can improve how you use them, and you can actually increase not your total lung capacity, but your vital capacity.
Okay. and this is related to the myths, maybe, from Tara. Can someone with asthma ever learn to free dive?
100%. Yes. Yes, absolutely. We've had many people who have been told they can't scuba dive, but they can successfully free dive. And in fact, some of the breathing techniques we use were first of all designed to help people with asthma. And yeah, so I've worked with people with asthma all the time.
Okay, so I'm looking the other way because I'm scanning through the questions. So I'm trying to find ones that sort of link, but that's not always easy. So, okay, this is a sort of more general one, which I think we've touched on quite. We've talked about this a bit, but maybe we can explore this a little bit more. Rachel wants to know, what are the health benefits to free diving?
Well, I mean, it's a bit complicated to answer, because it can't just, you can't, for example, learn to free dive and smoke like a chimney and drink like a fish and not take any exercise and expect that free diving is going to oh, hello, Carol Austin. You can't you can't free dive and treat your body really badly. But what free diving does is it gives you I believe, a greater awareness of your body. And you then take that awareness into every other aspect of your life. And of course, when you breathe properly, your sleep is better, your relaxation is better. I had one student, it was hilarious. Well, I've had a couple like this. One student, his wife came and found me and said, "I can't thank you enough. You've saved my marriage." And I'm like, "What?" And apparently her husband no longer snored because he'd learned to free dive and he'd sorted his breathing, he'd lost a bit of weight, so he didn't snore anymore. And I had another student who was a bouncer, and he was enormous. He was quite small, but very, very big. And he got into free diving so much that the next time I saw him, I didn't actually recognize him because he was so physically different. And he had become like this kind of yoga-y free diving Zen bouncer. So yeah, free diving can improve all aspects of your life, but it's more about awareness of your body and how you use it and what you do with it and what you do to it.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move on. We've got some technical questions about sort of more technique questions that come in. I've seen there's things popping up in the chat on that theme as well. So maybe a couple of people have asked about equalization. I guess they're talking about the pressure in their ears.
Yeah.
I was trying to find that. I've got so many questions here, I can't find them all. Advice for people who struggle to equalize their ears. Well, maybe you can just talk about the whole, the whole thing around equalization, and just tell us a little bit about that and where people encounter difficulties and how they might progress if they've got stuck.
So with equalization, it is the most challenging part about freediving. People come to a course thinking it's about breath hold. It's not. It's about relaxation and equalization. So if you're in a plane, you're descending, you feel that pressure build up in your ears and you swallow, or maybe you kind of pinch your nose or you move your jaw. That's you equalizing, because the airspace in your middle ear, as the pressure increases, that space decreases, and you need to find the air to put into that space. So when you've on scuba, so for example, if you're going down in an aeroplane, the pressure is slow. The pressure changes are slow. When you're scubaing, you're normally feet first, so it's easier to equalize, and you've got lots of air, so again, easier to equalize. When you're free diving, the amount of air you have to play with is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you're head first. So it becomes really challenging, and it took me a year to be able to equalize going head first. So there are lots of different ways to improve equalization. From a kind of a diet perspective, there are lots of foods that in some people can cause issues, because they can cause inflammation, they can cause an increase in mucus. So some dairy products can cause this, wheat can cause this, sugar, grains can cause it, but everyone's different. So I don't want to say, okay, everyone does this and the problem will be solved. The other thing you can do is work out if structurally there's a problem. So I am a huge believer in cranial osteopathy, because cranial osteopathy has really helped me. Like, I had huge sinus problems, which were caused by having lots of teeth pulled out when I was a teenager. So cranial osteopathy sorted that out for me. But the other thing when you're freediving is to keep the chin tucked in rather than extend it like that, and learn an equalization technique called the Frenzel. And that is where you use the back of the tongue to equalize rather than pressing from the tummy. So it's about learning the technique, lots of practice, and then maybe looking at other aspects of your diet and lifestyle.
Okay, thank you. So another topic that's come up several times, and I guess probably quite a big fear for people who are contemplating freediving, the risk of blackout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I can't remember where I saw the question now, but I can't. How do you avoid a blackout? There was one simple question, but there was several. There was another one that came out about, do you worry about it, and or you know, how's this something you deal with when you're free diving? Because you know, we're aware that you can have shallow water blackout. It's something that swimmers need to be aware of, you know, if they're doing breath hold training.
Yeah. No, I think that's a brilliant question, and I love talking about safety, because I have never had a blackout. I've never had a hypoxic fit. There are world record holding freedivers who have never had a blackout. They've never had a hypoxic fit. So it is possible to freedive for a very long time and to a very high standard and never have a blackout. So fundamentally, the biggest risk for having a blackout is hyperventilating. And hyperventilating, this is another myth. People think that hyperventilating is, you know, big breaths in and out. But all hyperventilating is breathing more than you need for what you're doing at the time. So if you're preparing for a free dive, which involves lying down and doing absolutely nothing, if you start breathing more than you would when you're falling asleep or watching TV, you're hyperventilating. So hyperventilating is super, super, super dangerous, and unfortunately can be easy to do. And there are some people, very, very small amount of people, who teach freediving, and they teach hyperventilation, but they wrap it up in these stupid terms like candle breathing or candle blowing, or it's a nonsense. In fact, that links back to another myth. The best way, the most safest way to breathe for freediving is essentially how you breathe now when you're sitting at rest or you're falling asleep. It's not an active process preparing to hold your breath. It's a passive process. So the risk of blackout is always there, but it is so easy never to have one. You basically have to never hyperventilate, always work with a really good instructor who can keep you within your limits, and make sure you don't exceed them. And in fact, generally speaking, on a freediving course, I'm always telling people that you've got so much more in the tank, you're absolutely fine, because I can tell their lips are super, super pink. I know that the breath hold they just did was super short, and they're going, no, oh my goodness, I was at my limit. And I know they weren't, but that's good, because they will always progress slowly. So there is the risk of blackout, but it is super, super easy to avoid blacking out ever.
Okay. And so on topic of safety, as you mentioned, you love talking about safety. So there was another question that came in. What other dangers are there? And the person, this was Darren, he specifically mentioned sort of things like being caught in debris, and you know, how do you plan your dives around those other kind of risks?
We always carry line cutters and knives. So I always dive with a knife, which is it's a yachting knife. So it's not a pointy stabby knife. It's got a curved hook ending in a serrated blade, and also a line cutter called an easy cut. So I always have two blades on me.
So let's just stay on the risk thing a little bit longer. What other things should people be aware of? I mean, for example, if someone was just experimenting with a little bit of breath holding in their swimming pool. Is that a really bad idea? Or
No, just no. Okay. The first thing is you should never, the only place you can safely breath hold on your own is if you're lying on your bed. So not seated, not standing, if you're lying on your bed. Fundamentally, the golden rule of freediving is you never freedive alone. But it's a little bit more complicated. That doesn't mean that you're in the sea and someone's on the beach. It means you never ever freedive without at least one person, your buddy, who knows exactly what you're doing and their job is to safety for you. So it's not two people toddling off and freediving together. It's one person doing a dive, safetied by somebody else. Then that person does a dive and you buddy for them. So that essentially is the golden rule. You just never ever freedive, but you never ever freedive without a buddy who knows how to rescue you, who is qualified in how to rescue you.
Okay. And Ella, are you still with us? I know you're trying to. Can we bring you back? Has the magazine got to press?
I'm literally just approving the last 3 pages because I've got the page numbers on.
Well, maybe we can give well, but before we finish, maybe we can give people a sneak preview of the cover or something, possibly. Have you been able to keep an eye on the chat and seen what's coming in?
I mean, you've answered quite a lot of the stuff that came through on the emails. I'm sorry, I don't know if this was answered about scary moments. Did you do this one?
No, I haven't. Okay.
Have you ever had a scary moment or difficulty getting back to the surface?
I've never had difficulty. Okay. It's been, people often say, well, how do you know how deep to go? Because you've got to come back up. And what my response is, you never go to a point where it's like that. You always progress really slowly and gradually, so that every dive just becomes easy. So I never want a dive to be difficult. So, okay, there have been 2 scary moments for me. One was when I was in a competition in Switzerland. So I was doing a 37-meter dive and I'd done deeper than that before. So in competition, you always do shallower than what you've done because competitions are stressful. And this was a very long time ago and the competition setup was not ideal. So it was in this very cold, very dark lake. And so I set off and I got my lanyard. So a lanyard is a safety feature. And the lanyard I was using was a very old schooly one and not particularly great. So I set off and at 10 meters, the lanyard got caught on the line. So I had to invert, untangle the lanyard and then duck dive again and keep going down to 37 meters. Now at the bottom, the bottom plate, so normally what happens, in fact, what always happens now, is you have something that stops the lanyard and then you have the rope continues and then you have a bottom plate with tags. So there is no risk of the lanyard entangling in this. On this dive, halfway down, my weight belt came off. So it kind of lodged halfway around my neck. Then at the bottom, there was just all these tags. So I overshot, turned round, grabbed a tag, and then what happened was my lanyard had got caught around all of these tags and I was stuck at 37 meters and I was like, oh, bloody hell. So luckily my lanyard had a quick release on it. So I undid the quick release and I just came back to the surface with my weight belt halfway around my neck. But when on the way back up, I thought, you know, I've never had a blackout, but if I was going to have one, it would be now. And so I concentrated on going, every time I finned with my monofin, I said in my head, I am okay, I am okay, I am okay. And I was completely fine. And the only other time I think I've ever had a kind of moment was in Malta when we were freediving in tuna pens. So what the Maltese do is they go out and they catch tuna and then they keep them in these massive pens until Chinese New Year when they can sell them for the most money. So we were in there and it was the most surreal thing because they just go in circles like this. And the guys had said, oh, just be careful because the vortex can suck you down. I was like, yeah, right, whatever, vortex. They're only fish. So I kind of duck dive down, and I was just kind of pootling around at about 10 meters, looking at, and they are big. They are like cows with these eyes and the teeth. And I was like, oh, I don't like this anymore. So I thought I'd just kind of float back up to the surface. And I was positively buoyant, so I should have floated back up to the surface. And I was kind of leisurely just spinning like this. And I was thinking, I should have hit the surface by now. And I looked up, and I had been sucked down to about 18 meters. And at which point I was like, oh, okay. So I finned really quickly, got back to the surface, and then informed everyone that no one was allowed to leave the surface. So that was something very unexpected. But, you know, I think as long as you always dive within your limits, and you have a healthy appreciation for, a healthy kind of fear, not fear, but understanding of the ocean, and you don't go and put yourself in dangerous situations. So obviously, diving with tuna, I'd never done that before. And the competition was a bit of an extreme example. But yeah, those I think are my two scary moments.
Mm. And Tara said that she wants to come and visit you at Vobster Key. So are there any particular dates you're leading the course?
We do have a course coming up next. Actually, let me look at my diary. This coming Monday and Tuesday, but then the next weekend course, let me just get my diary and I can tell you, where are we now? Is the 3rd and 4th of June. We'll be at Vobster 3rd and 4th of June. Also, before I forget, I'm running a free breathing optimization class on the Wednesday, the 7th of June, between 6:15 and 7. And if you can't make it but want to join in, then you can get the recording. So if you want to join in, then there's just a small form to register, and you can come and take part live or watch the recording afterwards. So that's another opportunity for people to just have a go with for free.
Excellent. And we've had another question just come in about what equipment people generally need for this.
Very little, very little. In fact, if you look at a kind of cost thing, it's so cheap, really, because once you've got your equipment, as long as you look after it, you can still have it. So in our hire stock for our students, we still have my very first pair of fins that I bought 23 years ago. So you need a mask and snorkel. You need long fins, preferably fin socks so they fit better. And you need some kind of exposure suit. So obviously in the UK, you're going to need a wetsuit. And then you're going to need a rubber weight belt and small weights to make sure that you're positively neutral at about 10 and positive on the surface. But really, you know, mask and snorkel, wetsuit, weight belt, fins, that's the, you know, the bare minimum. And
easily available at, you know, pretty much all the retailers we go to?
Yes, although just be careful, because there are some kind of rubbish stuff out there. There's some really expensive stuff as well that I'm thinking, oh, don't spend your money on that. But yeah, you can buy some gear relatively cheaply. Yes.
Yeah, but you get what you pay for effectively.
Well, yes and no, but you can buy, for example, you can buy a pair of plastic fins. So we sell plastic fins by Bochat as like our entry-level fins, but they're good to take you to 40 meters easily, and they're about 85 quid. But once you've got them, you've got them.
Yeah. It's been really interesting. Sort of been on the sidelines.
Can I bring Anna in a second, because Anna, you wrote the article. Is there anything you sort of, when you finished writing that article, is there anything you thought, oh, I wish I'd asked that? Oh, sorry to put you on the spot, by the way. I didn't warn you about that.
No, you didn't. I'm not sure there was something that I did, because I talked to Emma for quite a while. So even the main problem was actually trying to get it all into the article, not having enough space rather than desperately having more questions. No, I don't have anything extra.
Okay,
I don't think now.
I'll take the pressure off, because I have discovered another few questions in the original list that came in that are quite interesting, actually. So whether you're doing a free dive, this is a question from someone called Jenny. She says, do you count, or do you sing, or do you listen to your heartbeat? And what is actually going through your mind when you're under the water?
Okay, that's a brilliant question. And really, really brilliant question, because we address that all the time in the breathing classes. Like, what do you do? Where do you put your mind? And it depends on what type of freediving I'm doing. So if I'm doing freediving where I'm moving, that's different to what I think about when I'm doing what's called static apnea, when you're just lying there doing nothing. And that's the most challenging. So the easier one is when you're doing a dive. So before I do the dive, I'm visualizing what I'm doing in my mind. I'm thinking about all the stages of the dive. I'm thinking about my equalization. Then when I set off, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get the duck dive right, and I'm going to get my equalization going, and I'm going to stay orientated to the line, and I'm going to fin. I can feel myself getting negative, so I'm going to slow my finning down. Always thinking about equalization, thinking about this. So you're thinking about what you're doing, particularly the equalization. But when you are lying down, particularly on the surface of the water in a swimming pool, where there are lots of people, kind of lots of noise, and it's not very relaxing, and you can hear kids going, "Mummy, what's she doing?" And you're trying to take your mind off the fact you're holding your breath. It's super challenging. So I've done all kinds of things. I have counted really slowly up to 4. And then, like, I've counted my heartbeat. So I've counted like 6 beats for every 1, 2, 3, and then I could do it again. There was a time when, so I've done a lot of yoga nidra, and I've taught it for many years. So in yoga nidra, you have a rotation of consciousness, which is bringing your awareness to different parts of the body. And it's super, super powerful. So in my mind, I would often do that. There was a phase many years ago when, around the time that the film Frozen came out and the song Let It Go, and for some reason we were in a pool and some kid was singing it. And then it became, I would just sing Let It Go as I was holding my breath. So there are so many different things you can think about, but it's about taking your mind somewhere else rather than going, "Oh my God, I'm holding my breath, I really need to breathe, this is really horrible."
And there's a couple more questions, and I don't know how much you can talk about technique and how much you know in this kind of environment. It's not a very teaching environment that we're in right now. But you know, a couple of people have asked for tips. You know, how can I increase my breath holding? How can I swim further underwater? Can you talk a little bit about how you might start thinking about those things at least?
Yes. Well, I think the first thing to do is to just be aware of how your breathing is at rest, and whether, so this is always super interesting when you start looking at your breathing when you're at rest and noticing what happens at the end of the exhalation. Because if you are completely at rest and you don't have breathing dysfunction, then usually when you exhale, you pause. And you can pause for quite a long time before your body goes, okay, right, I'm going to inhale again. So that's the first thing I'd invite people to do, is when they're lying in bed tonight and they're going to sleep, just see, first of all, if they can take their mind away from their breathing. Don't think about it. Think about something else. And then it's almost like you're trying to sneak up on your breath and go, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? And just see how relaxed your breathing is and whether there is a natural pause at the end of the exhale. And then if there isn't, I want you to feel, what does it feel if you try and put a pause at the end of the exhale? And for most people, it is panicked. It is really panicked. And you're just like, no, I need to breathe in again. I need to breathe in. So that's something really simple that people can try. And then the next thing is, I'm trying to think of something really, really quick and easy. What I would say is that I have a load of free breathing optimization recordings. And I've got, for example, I've got a 15-minute one for the morning, 15-minute one for the evening. I've got half-hour ones. I've got ones for different exercises. So I would encourage you to just go and check all of those out. So it's completely free. Go and have a look at some of my breathing optimization exercises and videos.
Ella, you don't happen to have the link to Emma's website that you can post in the chat?
Just looking for it, actually.
Okay.
Funny enough.
So there was, well, a question came in. Let me see if I can open up the chat. I see them popping up. So yeah, someone has asked about the course. So if we can share the link to the course and your website where they can find the breathing exercise, that would be really good. So someone has asked, and this is a technical question about kit, can you use swimming wetsuits for free diving, or why are they generally two-piece wetsuits, and when would you use two long fins or a monofin, or is it just personal preference? So there's some
Okay.
questions about kit there.
Yeah, no, that's really, really great questions. Okay, so we have people who come on the course and they go, I don't need to use one of your freediving wetsuits because I've got a surfing suit or I've got a swimming suit. And we go, yes, but the problem is when you're swimming in a wetsuit, you're swimming, you're moving. When you're surfing, you're moving, you're out of the water. And when you're freediving, you're lying there, relaxing, not really doing anything. So you get colder much, much quicker. So yes, there is nothing to stop you using a swimming wetsuit to go freediving, except a swimming wetsuit that you use in the UK, you would need to use that abroad in somewhere very, very tropical and hot. So freediving wetsuits are generally two-piece because freediving wetsuits have to be super flexible so there's nothing to inhibit our breathing. So if you look at scuba suits, they have lots of kind of patterns and designs, and they're generally quite stiff. They're often nylon on both sides of the neoprene. So when the neoprene comes out of the machine, it's kind of uncoated, it's untreated, it's what's called open cell on both sides. So when you look at a classic scuba, like a semi-dry suit, it will have nylon on both sides of the neoprene, and it's not terribly flexible. So the wetsuits we have for freediving, they have nylon on the outside, which is really flexible. It's like a super stretched nylon. And then on the inside, it's open cell, which means that, well, it's very fragile, but it means that it has a really strong connection to your skin and it keeps you warmer. So the two-piece suits are generally so that you don't need to have any zips. So it minimizes the water flushing. They have an integrated hood, so you don't have water coming down the back of your neck. So freediving suits are designed for warmth and they're designed for flexibility. And so you put either a long john or a high waist pants on, and then you put the top on over that.
And the question about fins, mono or
Oh yes, sorry, yeah, brilliant question. Okay, a monofin is brilliant if you're after kind of depth, distance, power, but they are not very maneuverable. They are not suitable, excuse me, at all for recreational freediving. So you can't really buddy either effectively with a monofin, although some people have tried. So two fins are essentially safer, they're better for recreational freediving, and they're better for safety.
Okay, how are we doing, Tom? We've got a few minutes left. So this is an environmental question, I guess. Mitch has just asked, can you get Ulex versions of the wetsuit? So I don't know if you've come across Ulex. It's a sort of an alternative to plant-based alternative to neoprene. And I don't know if you've ever seen any
as far as I know, because I do a lot of work with Fourth Element, and the Fourth Element have a really, really strong kind of environmental ethos, and I know that they've been working with all kinds of interesting stuff. So I think they are the company who would be at the forefront of using something like that.
Okay. And I think we've covered, I mean, it's been absolutely fascinating. We've covered loads and loads of ground. I think we've got through a fair number of the questions that were sent in. We've got through a fair number of the questions that people have put in the chat. Is there anything else you feel that we've missed that you would have liked to have talked about this evening that we haven't?
I can't really think. I think because I'm so passionate about freediving, and I'm so passionate that everyone should feel that it's accessible to them. And it's not, I think it was great what you asked about the myths, because it's not just for, you know, super fit, super young people, it's for everyone. And so I want to just demystify that kind of image of freediving being a certain kind of elitist thing. It's really, really not. And ultimately, it's about being safe in the water and enjoying the water, enjoying whether you're in a pool or the ocean or a river or a lake. It's about just being in water and being in nature and safely and enjoying yourself. It's not about, okay, now I'm going to be a free diver and I'm going to dive super, super deep. It's not about that. It's just breath hold diving.
Okay, and so for getting started, everyone that's on this call, I guess they're probably thinking about how can I get started, and some of them are going to be lucky enough to be close enough to where you are and could come and do one of your courses. But if I know there's a couple of people from the US have joined the call today, for example. How do you go about finding because presumably you'd always recommend finding an instructor. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very easy to find an expert on YouTube who says they're an expert freediver, and they really can talk the talk. And often my students will send me videos and they go, what do you think of this? And I look, and the person comes across incredibly authoritatively, but what they're saying is absolute nonsense and actually quite dangerous. So I would always say, go and find an instructor who really, really knows their stuff, and talk to them about, like, some of the questions that I've been asked about safety. Go, okay, well, what's your safety record? What's your ratio of, instructor to students? How do you deal with this? What's your risk planning, or anything like that? So ask those kind of questions. And yeah, and in terms of the breathing, just check out some of the free videos I've got, because that's a great resource for you to just do stuff in your own time.
Yeah, and we had a couple of very last minute joiners, so I'm afraid they've missed everything. But one of them I just saw was Helena, who she sent in a pre-question. I didn't read it out because she wasn't here. I hadn't seen her name on the list, but she's just joined. It's someone she's met you before. So she says, "Hi Emma, we met in the Gosport Sets tank, and I can't wait to meet you again virtually." She has just joined, and her question is, what would be the best way to go back into freediving and training for beginners, which I think you've just been talking about just now. So sorry you missed that, Helena. I can see you've just joined, but we have recorded it, and you'll be able to, we'll share the recording later on and you'll be able to see that. And Ella, anything else from you, from anybody else?
No, I'm just sorry I was half in, half out of the room, but it looked brilliant.
Yeah, so I hope you haven't got too many more.
No, the magazine's gone. It's gone to the printer.
Oh, well done. Okay, there's a couple of things coming into the chat. I know we're going to have to, let me open that up again.
Just people saying goodbye.
Oh yeah, just people saying goodbye. Oh, someone asking if there's a certification that they should look for in instructors.
Okay, so there are lots of different agencies. So I started with an agency called Ada, and I actually started writing the course content, which is now taught worldwide. I was part of the founding education commission of Ada. So Ada courses should be great. So should SSI. So should RAID, the ones we teach. I personally teach. I teach the RAID system. There are other courses. There are other training agencies. But what I would just say is to try and go with an agency that, the predominant ones are Ada, RAID, SSI, but there are other schools that keep popping up. So I think just have a look at their safety. So I think there are some courses which it's all about performance. It's all about what you do as a freediver and how deep you go. And I don't like that approach. I like to start from a safety perspective and say, how good are you as a all-round freediver, which includes how safe are you as a buddy? Could you rescue your buddy? Could you do this? Could you do that? So on the RAID system, on the first level course, we teach towing. We teach a tired diver tow, an unconscious diver tow. We teach rescue on the surface. We teach rescue from depth. We teach buddying. We teach what happens if you get cramp. So we're teaching all of these skills as well as how to dive.
Okay, that's interesting that someone has just you've just actually answered a question that just came in as you were talking about, can you expand any more on being a buddy? So that was very timely that you were talking about being a buddy there.
Yes, I mean, a buddy it's about looking after your other diver on every level. So you need to be looking at them and going, okay, well, your mask is outside the hood of your wetsuit, so it's going to leak. Okay, let's sort that out. Oh, your weight belt is a bit too high. Let's put that down. And it's about doing everything else. It's about making sure they're safe on the dive, but it's everything. They're in position preparing, and you make sure that you hold their fins if they're going to knock into the boat or something. It's about just having an awareness of the other person at every single moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that our outdoor swimmers should we should learn within our community as well, when you're swimming with other people, and and people do that already and they look after each other, but it sounds like in freediving you've taken it to a more sort of formalized and systematic level. So that perhaps that's something that we could learn for open water swimming from freediving there. Emma, I've absolutely loved this evening's talk and chatting to you, and seeing all the questions, seeing the interest in the audience and seeing your enthusiasm. It's been absolutely amazing. And it's quite short notice we asked you to do this, and you agreed straight away. So really appreciate that. Thank you so much, and I hope you get some people on your course and you get some more converts.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I just love talking about freediving, so anytime. And like I said, we've got this free breathing optimization class on June the 7th, so if anyone wants to pop along and have a go, then please feel free.
Oh, thanks, Anna. And thanks, Emma, and thank you to Anna for bringing you to our swimming world. Just before we go, I thought I would just share really quickly, if anyone's still there, for those who are still with us, I will share the front cover of June. Ta-da!
Oh,
fabulous.
So the June issue is all about the sea. So this is beautiful Cornwall. So that's our sneaky peek of the cover for June,
which has just gone to press as we were talking this evening.
Literally pressed the button.
Ella was doing two jobs at the same time tonight.
So that will hopefully be with you all in the next, well, probably in another 2 weeks, but yes, soon.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. I have to turn off recording. How do I do that?